Week 14 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to drop this week. The first guy, Mitch Garver of the Texas Rangers. He's out for the season with the arm and forearm injury, and he's going to have season-ending surgery. So Garver in his first season with the Rangers, 10 home runs, 24 RBIs, 23 runs scored, a stolen base, a 207 average, and a 298 on base. So right here, pretty solid numbers with the homers and RBIs for a weak catcher position in fantasy baseball. Garver never a high batting average type of guy, even though with Minnesota, he hit 250s, 260s in his career over there. And over the last few weeks before he went down, it was 2 homers, 6 RBIs, with a 206 average and 308 on base. So fantasy owners, they went out there and dropped him quickly off their roster. Garver just getting injured a couple days ago here, and now immediately he's going to go under surgery, or already went for the surgery. So the last few games, July 4th at Baltimore, 1 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs. July 5th at Baltimore, 2 for 4, a homer, and that 1 and 2 runs. July 6th at Baltimore, 0 for 4. July 8th versus the Twins, 0 for 2, a run and a rib. July 9th versus the Twins, 1 for 4 with a rib. And July 10th versus Minnesota, 0 for 3. So Garver, he was starting to find the power stroke a little bit here for the Texas Rangers, but unfortunately, he's out for the season. Hopefully, he has a speedy recovery, and he comes back next season improved, and a guy that can help fantasy teams and the Texas Rangers. But redraft leagues, obviously, dynasty leagues, and keeper leagues, he's a guy to drop this week. The next guy is Brandon Donovan of the St. Louis Cardinals. So this Cardinal team, they've been struggling over the last few weeks. Yeah, I know they've won the last 2, though, versus Philly, but a lot of their guys aren't hitting the baseball or producing. So on the season here for Donovan, 2 home runs, 26 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 28 runs scored, 285 average, and a 392 on base. So Donovan, he was on a monster hot streak a few weeks ago, hitting over 300 on the season, but his numbers really fizzled out, especially over the last couple weeks. No homers and RBI, a run scored, 184 average, and a 273 on base. So the only thing he's really bringing to the table here is amazing versatility, qualifying at every position, first, second, third, shortstop, and outfield. Besides catcher, here's Donovan, and a great on-base percentage, but everything else is low. RBIs are low, run scored is low, stolen bases, you think you would get a little bit more out of him, but that hasn't been the case. And like I mentioned, it's just not enough for him to go on a fantasy value with a decent batting average and on-base percentage. The last few games here for Donovan, July 3rd at Philly, 1 for 4. July 4th at Atlanta, 1 for 4. July 5th at Atlanta, 1 for 5. July 6th at Atlanta, 1 for 3. July 7th at Atlanta, 1 for 5. July 8th versus Philly, 0 for 4. So he's been in the tailspin of a slump. And he's missed the last 3 games as well with an illness. But he should be back in the lineup either today or tomorrow as Donovan. But still, he's not a guy doing anything amazing where he should be rostered in 10 and 12 team leagues here. And he's been dropped in 11% of fantasy leagues, still owned in 38%. But I think he's an easy guy to get away from this week and drop. The next guy's his teammate, Juan Yepez of the St. Louis Cardinals. So Yepez, he's had great moments this season, slumping on and off years, Yepez. And now he's back into one of those slumps on the season, 11 home runs, 27 RBIs, 23 runs scored, at 255 average, and a 297 on base. So this guy don't draw walks. Early swinger of the count here. But to be honest, his strikeouts aren't horrible, 51 in 204 at-bats. But the last few weeks here, he can't get anything going as Yepez. 2 homers, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored at 167 average, and a 196 on base. Obviously, those numbers aren't going to get the job done for fantasy owners in the Cardinals. He's another versatile guy that qualifies at first, third, and outfield, but you can't wait on guys like this who don't have a track record of breaking out his slumps and having big seasons. And it's his first season in the major leagues as well. The power is definitely legit. I could see him in the future being a 20 to 30 home run type of hitter here is Juan Yepez. But right now, he's not doing anything for fantasy owners, and I would drop him. And this happened a few weeks ago here. Then he got hot again, you pick him up. And if he slumps again, you drop him. And that's what you got to do with Yepez, I guess, this season. July 6th at Atlanta, 0 for 3. July 7th at Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a run. July 8th versus Philly, 0 for 4. July 9th versus Philly, 0 for 3. July 10th versus Philly, 0 for 4. And July 11th versus Philly, 0 for 3. So he's moved up in the lineup over the last few games here, batting second or third, and it just hasn't worked out here for Juan Yepez. And this Cardinal team as a whole, besides Goldschmidt and Arenado, a lot of guys have been slumping hitters and hot and cold, inconsistent hitters. And right now, he's been cold as Yepez, and he's been dropped in 5% of fantasy leagues, still owned in 43% of leagues. But he's a hitter I would get away from this week and drop. The next guy's Jurickson Profar of the San Diego Padres. So far, he's on the injured list here with a concussion. And his numbers, they haven't been great as well this season. 8 homers, 38 RBIs, stolen bases, 50 runs scored, a 242 average, and a 343 on base percentage. So right here, those numbers aren't all that great when it's all said and done on the season here for Profar. I know he went on some hot streaks where he was hitting over 300 and found the power stroke as well, but everything hasn't been that great, except his on base is pretty solid and 50 runs scored. And over the last few weeks before he went on the injured list with the concussion, 3 runs scored, no homers, no RBIs, no stolen bases, a 188 average and a 316 on base. So right now with the injury and the bad play here for Profar, he's a guy I know that qualifies at first, second, and outfield, but he's also a guy with drop as well right now. He's not producing. He's not great at one thing here for fantasy. The on-base and the runs are his specialty, and they're good, but it's just not enough, I think, to garner much ownership, and he's been out since July 8th as well here as Profar. So the last few games before he went down, July 1st at the Dodgers 2 for 4, July 2nd at the Dodgers 0 for 4, July 3rd at the Dodgers 1 for 4, July 4th at versus Seattle 0 for 4, July 5th versus Seattle 1 for 4, and July 7th versus the Giants 0 for 2. So right here, the San Diego team, they've been slumping a little bit of late here. Profar, I know he's been a decent player for them, but he's a better real-life player than a fantasy baseball player, in my opinion. And in 10-team leagues or maybe 12-team leagues, I would drop him this week here because he don't do one thing amazing, is Profar. And his power numbers has dropped off as well, which I figured they would. Last season, he had 5 home runs. This year, he already has 8, but still, he's not going to be a guy that's going to hit 20, 25 home runs, is Profar. And I would drop him this week. And the 5th and final hitter I look to drop this week is Jarred Duran on the Boston Red Sox. Duran, I mentioned him as a pickup last week, but now he just hasn't done much here on the season. 1 homer, 7 RBIs, 14 runs scored, 6 stolen bases, a 277 average, and a 327 on base. So right here, another guy who don't draw a lot of walks. He don't get on base unless he's getting a hit. Only 50 points higher is his on-base percentage to his batting average here, is Jarred Duran. And over the last few weeks here, he's slumping. 1 homer, 4 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 5 runs scored, 214 average, and a 250 on base. And he struck out 14 times as well in the last 42 at-bats. Duran, he's been dropped in 5% of fantasy leagues, but still owned in 36% of leagues. I think 14-team leagues are deeper with Duran, but 10 teams and 12-team leagues, I think I would cut him loose here this week. July 6th versus Tampa, 1 for 4 with a run. July 7th versus the Yankees, 0 for 4. July 8th versus the Yankees, 0 for 1. July 9th versus the Yankees, 0 for 4 with a run. July 10th versus the Yankees, 0 for 3. And July 11th at Tampa, 1 for 5 with a run, a rib, and a stolen base. So right here, Duran, he got moved down. He's up and down in this lineup, either batting 9th or 1st, depending if it's a lefty or righty here. But right now, moving around the lineup here isn't a good thing, I think, for a young player in his second season here in the major leagues. And he's a guy that relies on his speed, and if he's not getting on base and not stealing bases, he don't really have much fantasy value. I know this guy probably could steal 40-plus bases in a full season, but right now he's not getting on base much. I know he's scoring runs, but the batting average isn't great, and his on-base to batting average ratio isn't good either here. So right now, Duran, he's a player I would drop. Yeah, he could get things going once again sooner than later, but right now there's no need to hold on to him if he's not bringing his specialty to the table, stealing bases, while he's not getting on base much. So that's a few hitters I look to drop here in Week 14 of the fantasy baseball season.